I came home early. Found my husband in the tub with the neighbor. I locked the door. Called her husband. Come over now, I whispered. You need to see this. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, grab a warm cup of tea and get comfortable. I'd love to know what time of day you're watching this video. Please comment M for morning, A for afternoon, or E for evening. Now, let me take you into this story. There are moments in life that divide your timeline into two distinct sections, the before and the after. The before is usually filled with a comfortable blindness, a soft haze of trust and routine. The after is sharp, jagged, and painfully clear. My moment didn't arrive with a storm or a dramatic explosion. It arrived on a humid, suffocating Tuesday in July, right in the middle of a quiet, wealthy suburb just outside of Chicago. My name is Valery. I am 47 years old, and until that afternoon, I thought I had everything a woman my age could want. I had a career I was proud of as a chief financial officer for a mid-sized logistics firm. I had a home that I had meticulously decorated with hand-picked Italian tiles and custom furniture. And I had Greg. Greg was my husband of 15 years, the man I had supported through 3 failed business ventures and endless midlife crises. I thought we were a team. I was the anchor, and he was the sail. I didn't realize that the sail had been catching wind from a completely different direction. That Tuesday was oppressive. The kind of Chicago heat that sticks to your skin the moment you step outside, making the air feel heavy and thick. I had left for work early, around 6:30 a.m., leaving Greg asleep in our king-sized bed. He had been working from home for the last 8 months, trying to get his latest consulting gig off the ground. Around noon, I realized I had left a crucial folder of tax documents on the kitchen island. It was unlike me. I am a woman of precision. I don't forget things. But that morning, I had been distracted, feeling a strange, low-level anxiety thrumming in my chest that I couldn't explain. I called Greg to tell him I was swinging by, but he didn't pick up. I figured he was on a Zoom call or maybe taking a lunch break. I drove the 20 minutes from my office to our cul-de-sac. When I pulled into the driveway, the first thing I noticed was the car. It was a silver Toyota SUV. Teresa's car. Teresa was our neighbor from across the street. She was 42, a stay-at-home mom with a smile that was always a little too wide and eyes that always seemed to be scanning my outfit, assessing the cost. We were friends, or so I thought. We drank wine on the patio. I bought Girl Scout cookies from her daughter. Seeing her car in my driveway was odd, but not alarming. Maybe she had dropped off a package? Maybe she needed to borrow the spare key because she locked herself out again? I killed the engine and walked to the front door. The heat was relentless, beads of sweat already forming on my hairline. I unlocked the door and stepped into the cool, climate-controlled sanctuary of my foyer. Silence. Greg? I called out. No answer. The house was perfectly still, the only sound was the low hum of the central air conditioning working overtime to battle the July sun. I walked into the kitchen. The folder was right there on the island where I left it. I grabbed it, ready to turn around and leave. But then, I heard it. It was a sound that didn't belong in the middle of a workday. It was the distinct, rhythmic churning of the jets in our master bathroom's jacuzzi tub. And over that, the sound of giggling. It wasn't the innocent giggle of a child. It was the husky, breathless laugh of a woman. My heart hammered against my ribs, a painful, frantic rhythm. My brain tried to offer logical explanations. Maybe the plumbing was acting up? Maybe the cleaning lady brought a friend? But we didn't have a cleaning lady on Tuesdays. I kicked off my heels so I wouldn't make a sound on the hardwood stairs. I ascended slowly, my hand gripping the banister so hard my knuckles turned white. With every step, the sounds became clearer. A splash of water. A deep, masculine groan that I recognized instantly. I reached the landing and looked down the hallway toward the master suite. The double doors to the bedroom were open. The door to the ensuite bathroom was cracked a few inches, steam escaping into the bedroom. I walked to that door. I didn't tremble. I didn't cry. A strange, icy numbness washed over me. It was the same feeling I got right before a high-stakes board meeting, a total shutdown of unnecessary emotion. I pushed the door open. The sight was almost comical in its cliché. There, in the oversized tub I had paid for with my last Christmas bonus, was my husband, Greg. He was facing away from me, his head thrown back against the rim. And straddling him, facing the door, was Teresa. The water was bubbling around them, but the silence that fell in that room was instant and deafening. Teresa saw me first. Her eyes went wide, her mouth opening in a silent scream of horror. She scrambled backward, splashing water onto my expensive travertine floors. Greg whipped his head around, his face flushing a deep, violent red. "Valery," he choked out, his voice cracking. It's not what you think." The absurdity of the statement almost made me laugh. "Not what I think? You are naked inside my wife, inside my tub." I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't launch into a hysterical tirade. I simply looked at them. I looked at Greg, the man whose health insurance I paid for. I looked at Teresa, the woman whose children I had bought birthday gifts for. "Stay right there," I said. My voice was so low, so calm, it didn't sound like mine. It sounded like a judge reading a death sentence. "Valery, wait, please." Greg started to rise from the water. I said, "Don't move," I commanded. I stepped back out into the bedroom. I grabbed the heavy brass handles of the double bathroom doors. I pulled them shut with a definitive thud. And then, I did the most satisfying thing I have ever done in my life. I turned the small, privacy lock on the handle. Click. It was a sharp, final sound. "Valery! Valery, open this door!" Teresa screamed from the other side, pounding her fist against the wood. "You can't do this." "I just did," I whispered to the empty bedroom. I stood there for a moment, staring at the wood grain of the door. My marriage was over. My friendship was a lie. My life, as I knew it, had just evaporated in the steam of a jacuzzi. But as I stood there, listening to their muffled panic, I realized something. I wasn't just a victim. I was the one holding the key. Before I tell you what I did next, I want to thank you for being here with me. It's not easy to relive this day, but I know many of you have felt this same pain. Please, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. Seeing your support from all over the world gives me the strength to finish this story. I leaned my back against the locked bathroom door, sliding down until I hit the floor. On the other side, the pounding had stopped, replaced by frantic, hushed whispering. They were plotting. They were trying to get their stories straight. It was pathetic. As I sat there on the plush carpet of the bedroom I had designed to be our sanctuary, my mind didn't go forward to the divorce lawyers or the custody battles. It went backward. It rewound 15 years to the beginning. Greg and I met when I was 32. I was already a rising star in the finance world, focused, ambitious, and frankly, a little lonely. Greg was charming. He was a consultant, which I later learned was a fancy word for unemployed with big ideas. But he made me laugh. He made me feel soft in a world that required me to be hard. When we got married, I made a choice. I chose to be the provider. I didn't mind. I was good at making money, and Greg was good at spending it. He wanted the big house in the suburbs. I worked overtime to get the mortgage approved. He wanted the luxury sedan? I signed the lease. I told myself it was a partnership. I brought the paycheck, he brought the lifestyle. I wanted to protect his ego. I knew it bothered him that his wife earned triple his salary. so I put the house in both our names. I put the cars in his name. I let him play the big man at dinner parties, picking up the check with the credit card I paid off every month. I thought I was being a supportive wife. Now I realize I was just being a convenient ATM. And then there was Teresa. Teresa and her husband, Patrick, moved in across the street 5 years ago. Patrick was a general contractor, a big, quiet man with rough hands and a shy smile. He worked from dawn until dusk, building houses for other people while his own wife complained that he was never home. Teresa was everything I wasn't. She was domestic. She baked. She had time to go to Pilates at 10 a.m. She latched onto me almost immediately. "Oh, Valerie, I don't know how you do it," she would coo, sipping the Pinot Grigio I had poured her in my living room. Working all those hours, dealing with all that stress. I would just die. I need to be taken care of. I took that as a compliment back then. I thought she admired my strength. I didn't hear the undercurrent of envy. I didn't see the way her eyes lingered on my diamond earrings or the new designer bag I had left on the counter. I treated her like a sister. When her youngest son broke his arm and they were short on the deductible because Patrick's client hadn't paid yet, I wrote the check. "Don't worry about it," I told her. "Pay me back whenever." She never did. When she complained that she had nothing to wear for her anniversary dinner, I let her raid my closet. "You're so lucky, Val," she had said, holding up a silk dress. "You don't really have to worry about being pretty, do you? You have money. Money fixes everything." I remember freezing for a second when she said that. It was a backhanded slap disguised as a casual observation. I laughed it off. "Trust me, Teresa, I'd trade the spreadsheets for your waistline any day," I had joked. She had smiled then, a tight, predatory little smile. "Maybe one day you can teach me how to get what I want," she said. I sat there on the floor, listening to the water draining from the tub on the other side of the door. The drain gurgled, a mocking sound. I realized now that Teresa hadn't wanted to learn from me. She wanted to be me. Or rather, she wanted what I had, but without the 40-hour work weeks and the late nights during tax season. She wanted the house. She wanted the lifestyle. And apparently, she wanted the husband who came with it. It made sense now. The way she would accidentally drop by when Patrick was working late. The way she would ask Greg for help with things that Patrick could have easily fixed, a leaky faucet, a stuck window. She was planting seeds, and my husband, with his fragile ego and his need to be adored, was fertile ground. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, hot and angry. I wiped it away furiously. I wouldn't cry for them. Not anymore. I had spent 15 years building this life, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. And they thought they could just take it? They thought they could laugh at me in my own bathtub while I was out earning the money to pay for the water they were soaking in? No. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard rage. It was the kind of rage that burns clean. It clarified everything. I stood up. My knees popped, but my legs felt steady. Inside the bathroom, Teresa started shouting again. "Valerie! It's getting hot in here. Turn on the AC." I looked at the thermostat control on the wall of the bedroom. I reached out and pressed the off button for the master suite zone. "It's going to get a lot hotter, Teresa," I whispered. "You better get comfortable." Standing in the bedroom, staring at the closed door, the last 6 months replayed in my mind like a movie reel I should have analyzed sooner. The signs had been there. They were like hairline cracks in a windshield, easy to ignore until the whole thing shatters in your face. It started with the gym. Greg had never been a fitness enthusiast. He was a man who enjoyed his steak and his scotch. But in January, he suddenly joined an upscale health club. "I need to look the part to get these high-end clients, Val," he had said, flexing in the mirror. He started buying expensive protein powders and new workout gear. Then came the grooming. He started dyeing his hair to cover the gray at his temples. He bought new cologne, something musky and youthful, completely different from the classic scent I had bought him for years. "You're trying to impress someone," I had teased him one morning while we were getting ready. He had whipped around, his eyes flashing with irritation. "I'm trying to improve myself, Valery. Why do you always have to be so cynical? Maybe if you put a little effort into your appearance, you'd understand." The comment had stung. I was 47. I had laugh lines. My body had softened after years of sitting at a desk. But I took care of myself. To hear my husband imply I was letting myself go hurt more than I admitted. Then there was the gaslighting. God, the gaslighting. About 3 months ago, I came home and smelled perfume in the living room. It was floral, cloying, Teresa's signature scent. Was Teresa here? I asked Greg at dinner. He didn't even look up from his phone. No. Why? It smells like her perfume. Strongly. Greg sighed, putting his fork down with an exaggerated clatter. Valery, are we doing this again? You're imagining things. It's the air freshener. Or maybe it's you. You've been so paranoid lately. Is this a hormonal thing? My mother got really suspicious and erratic when she went through the change. I felt shame flood my cheeks. Was it me? Was I becoming that bitter, jealous older woman? I apologized. I actually apologized to him for smelling his mistress in my living room. I remembered the business dinners. Greg suddenly had a lot of networking events in the city. He would come home late, smelling of mints and exhaustion. How was it? I would ask, trying to be interested. Boring. Just a bunch of suits, he would mumble, heading straight for the shower. He never wanted to talk about the details. And the shower, he started showering the second he walked in the door, scrubbing away the evidence of his betrayal. Teresa played her part too. She became bolder. She started making little digs at neighborhood gatherings. Valery is so dedicated to her career, she said loudly at the Memorial Day block party, handing Greg a beer. I don't know how she finds time to be a wife. I mean, Greg, you must get lonely in that big house all day. I had laughed it off, clutching my wine glass a little too tightly. Greg is a big boy, Teresa. He can entertain himself. Oh, I'm sure he can, she had winked. Looking back, the audacity was breathtaking. They were mocking me to my face. They were getting a thrill out of seeing how close they could get to the truth without me catching on. It was a game to them. I was the clueless, funding source for their little romance. I walked over to the nightstand on Greg's side of the bed. I needed to know the extent of it. I needed to know exactly how stupid I had been. I opened the drawer. Nothing but reading glasses and a book he hadn't touched in months. I checked under the mattress. Nothing. Then I saw it. His phone. In his haste to jump into the tub with Teresa, he had left his smartphone on the dresser, plugged into the charger. Greg was usually glued to that phone. He took it to the bathroom, to the garage, even to check the mail. But he had gotten sloppy. Arrogance does that to people. They think they are invincible right before they fall. I walked over and picked it up. It felt heavy in my hand, like a loaded weapon. I swiped up. No passcode. Of course not. He had removed it last week, claiming it was annoying to type it in every time he wanted to check stocks. Or maybe he just wanted quick access to communicate with her. My thumb hovered over the message icon. My heart was pounding again, a dull thud in my ears. I knew that once I looked, I could never unsee it. I could never go back to the naive Valery who thought her biggest problem was tax season. But I had to know. Inside the bathroom, the whispering had turned into an argument. You said she was at work. Teresa hissed. I didn't know she was coming back. Shut up, let me think. Greg snapped back. I unlocked the phone. I tapped on the messages. Teresa's name was at the top, saved with a heart emoji. I started scrolling. And as I read, the floor seemed to drop out from under me. It wasn't just sex. It wasn't just a midlife crisis fling. It was a conspiracy. I stood there, gripping the phone, my eyes scanning the texts. The cruelty was one thing, jokes about my weight, complaints about my nagging, photos of them in my bed while I was at work. That was painful, yes. But it was the other messages that made my blood run cold. Greg, she suspects nothing. The refinance paperwork is on her desk. Once she signs the equity line of credit, we'll have access to the $500,000. Teresa, good. Because I can't stand living with Patrick anymore. He's so cheap. I need that money so we can get the condo in Florida. Greg, don't worry, baby. Just a few more weeks. We'll cash out, dump the debt on her, and vanish. She'll be so buried in litigation she won't be able to chase us. I felt bile rise in my throat. They weren't just sleeping together. They were planning to bankrupt me. They were going to leverage the house, my house, take the cash, and leave me with the debt. They were planning to destroy my future to fund their retirement in the sun. I lowered the phone. My hand was shaking, not from sadness, but from adrenaline. This was no longer a marriage dispute. This was war. And in war, you need allies. I looked at the locked bathroom door. Greg, I said loudly. The whispering stopped. Valerie? Baby? Greg's voice came through, trying to sound reasonable, calm. The voice he used when he wanted me to buy him a new car. Look, let's talk about this. You're upset. I get it. But locking us in here it's illegal, Val. It's kidnapping. You don't want to go to jail, do you? You're worried about the law? I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. That's rich, Greg. Considering what I just read on your phone. Silence. Dead silence from the other side. Open the phone, Greg, Teresa whispered frantically. Did you lock it? I left it on the dresser, Greg stammered. You idiot! Teresa shrieked. I ignored them. I scrolled through my own contacts. I found the number I needed. Patrick. I hesitated for a split second. Calling Patrick would blow this wide open. It would destroy his life just as thoroughly as mine had been destroyed. He was a good man. He didn't deserve this. But he deserved to know. He deserved to know that the wife he worked himself to the bone for was plotting to leave him penniless. I pressed call. It rang once. Twice. 3 times. Hello? Patrick's voice was breathless. I could hear the roar of heavy machinery in the background. Valerie? Is everything okay? Patrick, I said. I tried to keep my voice steady, but the reality of what I was about to say choked me up. Where are you? I'm at the job site in Oak Brook. Why? Is Teresa okay? Did something happen to the kids? Panic instantly spiked in his tone. He was such a good father. The kids are at school, Patrick. They're safe, I assured him. But you need to come home. To my house. Right now. Your house. Why? Is there a leak? Did Teresa need help with something? Patrick, please. Just listen to me. I took a deep breath. Teresa is here. At my house. Okay. He sounded confused. She's in the master bathroom, Patrick. With Greg. The line went silent. The machinery noise in the background seemed to fade away as if the world had stopped turning for him too. I don't understand, he said slowly. I came home early, I said, my voice hardening. I found them in the jacuzzi. Together. Naked. No, Patrick breathed. It was a sound of pure denial. No, Val. Teresa she's at yoga. She told me she was going to yoga. She's not at yoga, Patrick. She's in my tub. I locked them inside. You locked them in? Yes. And Patrick? You need to see this. You need to hear what they've been planning. Not just the affair. The money. They're stealing from us, Patrick. I'm coming, he said. His voice was different now. The panic was gone, replaced by a low, dangerous rumble. I'm 20 minutes out. The line clicked dead. I lowered the phone. 20 minutes. I had 20 minutes to prepare the battlefield. Who was that? Greg called out from the bathroom. His voice held a tremor of true fear now. Valerie, who did you call? I called your partner in crime's husband, I replied calmly. Patrick is on his way. No! Teresa screamed. It was a guttural, animalistic sound. Valerie, you can't. He'll kill me. He'll kill us both. You don't know him when he's angry. I think I'm about to find out, I said. I walked over to the dresser and picked up Greg's phone again. I needed to secure the evidence. I went to the cloud settings and made sure everything was backing up. Then, I forwarded every incriminating text, every photo, every email about the bank accounts to my own email address. I also forwarded them to my work email, just to be safe. Then, I did something else. I went into the settings of the house. We had a smart home system. I pulled up the climate control for the master bathroom. It was July in Chicago. It was 95 degrees outside with 80% humidity. I turned the bathroom heat on. I set it to 85 degrees. Let them sweat, I muttered to myself. I went downstairs to the kitchen to wait for Patrick. I poured myself a glass of ice water. My hands were steady now. The shock had worn off, replaced by the cold, calculating precision of a CFO facing a hostile audit. They wanted to play games with my assets? They wanted to liquidate my life? They were about to learn that you never, ever try to con the person who balances the books. I sat on a stool at my kitchen island, the cold granite pressing against my forearms, grounding me. Greg's phone sat next to my glass of water, the screen glowing intermittently with notifications. Every time it lit up, it felt like another nail in the coffin of my marriage. I decided to dig deeper while I waited for Patrick. I knew about the affair. I knew about the plan to take out the equity loan. But as I navigated through Greg's apps, I realized the rot went much deeper. I opened his cryptocurrency app. I knew Greg dabbled in crypto, he called it diversifying our portfolio, but he always told me he only had a few $1,000s in there, play money. I looked at the balance. My breath hitched. $142,000. I scrolled through the transaction history. There were transfers coming in from a bank account I didn't recognize. I tapped on the details. It was a joint account under the names Greg Scott and Teresa Miller. They had a joint bank account. I quickly logged into my own banking app on my phone to cross-reference. I pulled up our main savings account. Everything looked normal on the surface. But then I checked the transaction history for the last 2 years. There were withdrawals. $500 here at the ATM, $2,000 transferred to consulting fees, $1,500 for home repairs. They were small enough amounts that I, busy with managing multi-million-dollar corporate accounts, hadn't flagged them as suspicious. I trusted my husband. I assumed he was buying equipment or paying vendors for his failing business. But he had been siphoning our money, my money, into a secret account with our neighbor. I did the mental math quickly. Over 2 years, he had drained nearly $60,000 from our savings. Add that to the crypto balance, where did the rest come from? Then it hit me. Teresa. Teresa managed the finances for her household because Patrick was too busy working and claimed he wasn't good with computers. Patrick made good money as a contractor. Very good money. They weren't just stealing from me. They were bleeding Patrick dry too. I felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't just a crime of passion. This was grand larceny. This was a calculated, long-term embezzlement scheme disguised as a friendship. Valery! Greg's voice bellowed from upstairs, muffled but audible. It's getting really hot in here. The AC is off. Turn it back on. We can't breathe. Teresa screeched. I'm going to faint. I took a sip of my ice water. Open a window, I said to the empty kitchen, knowing they couldn't hear me. But I knew they couldn't open a window. The master bathroom windows were sealed glass blocks for privacy. They were trapped in a rapidly heating glass box. A heavy truck engine roared in the driveway. The sound of a door slamming echoed through the front of the house. Patrick was here. I walked to the front door and opened it before he could knock. Patrick looked like a man walking to the gallows. He was still wearing his work boots, covered in drywall dust. His t-shirt was stained with sweat and dirt. He looked exhausted, aged 10 years since I last saw him a few days ago. He stopped on the porch, looking at me. His blue eyes were wide, fearful, pleading with me to tell him it was a bad joke. Val, he croaked. Tell me you're crazy. Tell me you're having a breakdown and imagining things. I stepped aside and gestured for him to come in. I wish I could, Patrick. I really do. He stepped into the foyer. The smell of drywall dust and honest labor followed him. It was such a contrast to Greg's cologne and lies. Where are they? He asked, his voice trembling. Upstairs. Master bath. Locked in. He moved toward the stairs, his fists clenched at his sides. Wait, I said, reaching out to touch his arm. His muscle was rock hard, tense with rage. Before you go up there, you need to see this. I held out Greg's phone. What is it? It's not just sex, Patrick, I said softly. They've been stealing from us. Look. I showed him the joint bank account app on Greg's phone. I showed him the transfers. Patrick stared at the small screen. He squinted, trying to make sense of the numbers. Then, his face went gray. That account number. He whispered, pointing to the source of the funds. That's my parents' retirement fund. My dad has dementia. Teresa has power of attorney to pay for his care facility. My hand flew to my mouth. Oh my God. She told me the facility raised their rates, Patrick said, his voice shaking. She said we needed to put more in. I've been working weekends. I've been taking extra jobs to cover it. He looked up at me, and the heartbreak in his eyes was devastating. She's stealing my dad's nursing home money to buy crypto with your husband? And to buy a condo in Florida, I added, showing him the text message. They plan to leave us, Patrick. Bankrupt and alone. The sorrow in Patrick's face vanished. It was replaced by something dark, something primal. The veins in his neck bulged. Florida, he snarled. Yes. He handed the phone back to me. He didn't run up the stairs. He walked. Heavy, deliberate steps. The steps of a man who had nothing left to lose. I followed him. I wanted to see this. I needed to see this. We reached the landing. The shouting from the bathroom had stopped, replaced by the sound of running water. Maybe they were trying to cool down with cold water, but I had turned off the hot water heater from the basement app too, so they only had lukewarm tap water. Patrick stood before the double doors. He didn't knock. "Teresa," he roared. The sound shook the walls. Inside, a scream. Then silence. "Patrick?" Teresa's voice was small, terrified. "Patrick, honey, listen, she's crazy. She locked us in. Help me." "Help you?" Patrick laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Help you steal more of my dad's money? Help you buy a condo in Florida?" Dead silence. "You gave my money to him?" Patrick yelled, kicking the door. The wood splintered slightly. "I break my back every day. I come home with dust in my lungs. And you give my sweat to this leech?" "Hey!" Greg yelled from inside. "Watch who you're calling a leech, buddy." "Buddy?" Patrick turned to me. "Valery, unlock the door." "Patrick," I warned. "If I unlock it, you can't kill them. We go to jail if you kill them. They aren't worth prison." He looked at me, breathing hard. His chest heaving. He wiped a dirty hand across his face, leaving a streak of gray dust. "I won't kill them," he said. "But I want to look them in the eye when I end their lives." I nodded. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key. I held the key up, the small piece of metal glinting in the hallway light. It felt insignificant, yet it held the power to unleash a hurricane. "Are you ready?" I asked Patrick. He nodded, his jaw set so tight I could see the muscle twitching. "Do it." I inserted the key. I turned it. Click. I didn't open the door. I stepped back and let Patrick do the honors. He didn't gently turn the handle. He kicked the door open. Both doors swung inward, banging against the tiled walls of the bathroom. The wave of heat and humidity that rolled out was palpable. It smelled of lavender bath salts and fear. Greg and Teresa were scrambling. They had drained the tub but hadn't fully dressed. Greg was trying to wrap a towel around his waist, slipping on the wet floor. Teresa was cowering in the corner, holding a robe in front of her like a shield. They looked pathetic. Stripped of their clothes, their dignity, and their secrets, they were just two shivering, sweaty liars. Patrick stepped into the bathroom. He seemed to fill the entire space. His work boots left dusty footprints on the pristine white tiles, the tiles I used to worry about keeping clean. Now, I didn't care if he smashed them all. "Patrick, baby, please," Teresa sobbed, tears streaming down her face, mixing with the sweat. "It was a mistake. It just happened. We were confused." "Confused?" Patrick's voice was dangerously quiet. He walked toward her. She shrank back against the marble vanity. "You were confused when you transferred my father's money to a secret account? You were confused when you planned to move to Florida?" Teresa's face went white. She looked at Greg. "You told him? You idiot, you told him?" "I didn't tell him anything," Greg shouted, backing away as Patrick turned his gaze toward him. "Valery hacked my phone. This is illegal. Invasion of privacy." Patrick looked at Greg with pure disgust. Greg, with his dyed hair and his soft hands and his expensive gym membership. Patrick, with his calloused hands and his dusty clothes. "You touched my wife," Patrick said. "She came on to me." Greg squealed. "She said you were boring. She said you were always dirty and too tired for her." I saw Patrick flinch. That hit the mark. It was his deepest insecurity that he wasn't sophisticated enough for Teresa. I stepped forward. I couldn't let Greg manipulate him. Patrick, I said sharp and clear. Greg is lying. Look at the texts. Greg called you a dumb ox who was easy to fool. He mocked you. Patrick's eyes hardened again. He looked at Greg. I might be a dumb ox, Patrick said. But I built the house you're standing in. Patrick's company had done our renovation years ago. And I know how to take it apart. What does that mean? Greg stammered. It means, Patrick said, that I'm done. We're done, Teresa. I'm taking the kids. I'm taking the truck. I'm taking whatever is left of the money you haven't stolen. You can't take the kids. Teresa shrieked. I'm their mother. You're a thief, Patrick said. And an adulterer. In the state of Illinois, fault matters when it comes to custody if it affects the children's welfare. Stealing their grandfather's care money? Yeah, a judge is going to love that. Patrick turned to walk out, but then he stopped. He looked at the vanity counter where Teresa's diamond earrings, a gift for their 10th anniversary, were sitting. He picked them up. Patrick, those are mine. Teresa cried. I paid for them, he said. He put them in his pocket. Then he looked at Greg. And you? You owe me 40 grand. What? Greg blinked. That's how much of my dad's money went into your crypto account, Patrick said. I saw the transfers. You pay me back, or I swear to God, I will dismantle you piece by piece. Patrick walked out of the bathroom, brushing past me. He looked broken, but lighter. Like he had dropped a heavy load he didn't know he was carrying. Valerie, he said, stopping in the bedroom. I need a drink. Me too, I said. Let's go downstairs. Wait! Greg yelled, trying to follow us, clutching his towel. You can't just leave us here. We need to talk. We need to settle this like adults. I spun around. Adults? Adults don't hide in bathtubs. Adults don't steal from their spouses. I pointed a finger at him. You have 10 minutes to get dressed and get out of my house. Both of you. If you are still here in 11 minutes, I call the police and report the embezzlement. I have the evidence. I have the motive. Try me. Greg froze. He knew I wasn't bluffing. I turned off the lights in the bedroom, leaving them in the dim, humid bathroom. 10 minutes. I called out. Patrick and I walked downstairs. The sound of his heavy boots on the stairs sounded like the drums of war. We went to the kitchen. I opened the liquor cabinet and pulled out the bottle of Blue Label Johnny Walker that Greg had been saving for a special occasion. I poured 2 generous glasses. Patrick took his glass. His hand was shaking slightly. He downed half of it in one gulp. I feel like an idiot, he whispered, staring at the countertop. How did I not see it? We didn't see it because we don't think like them, I said, taking a sip. The scotch burned, a cleansing fire. We work. We build. We trust. They take. They consume. They lie. Patrick looked at me. His eyes were red-rimmed. So what do we do now? Divorce? Divorce is just the paperwork, Patrick, I said, setting my glass down. A plan was forming in my mind. A cold, beautiful, intricate plan. Divorce is too easy for them. They want to go to Florida? They want to be together? I pulled out my phone. Let's help them, I said. But let's make sure they go with nothing. How? Patrick asked. I'm a CFO, Patrick, I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. I know where the money is. And I know how to freeze it. But first, we need to make sure everyone else knows who they really are. What do you mean? I said, tapping my contact list. It's time to make some phone calls. Starting with Teresa's mother. Patrick's eyes went wide. Teresa's mother was a terrifying woman, a pillar of the community who tolerated no scandal. She'll disown her, Patrick whispered. Exactly, I said. Ready to burn it down? Patrick took another sip of Greg's expensive scotch. He set the glass down hard. Pass me the phone. The kitchen was cool, a stark contrast to the stifling heat upstairs, but the atmosphere between Patrick and me was electric. We were no longer just neighbors, we were co-conspirators in our own salvation. Okay, I said, opening my laptop on the island. Before we call her mother, we need to secure the assets. If they think they can run, they'll try to drain whatever accounts we haven't found yet. I logged into our joint bank accounts. My fingers flew across the keyboard. What are you doing? Patrick asked, leaning over my shoulder. He smelled of drywall and sweat, but right now, it smelled like integrity. I'm freezing the accounts, I explained. I'm changing the passwords to the online banking. I'm marking the credit cards as lost or stolen so they'll be declined if Greg tries to use them to book a hotel tonight. Can you do that? It's my name on the primary account, I said. Greg is an authorized user. I just revoked his authorization. I hit enter. Done. Greg's credit cards are now useless pieces of plastic. What about Teresa? Patrick asked. She has access to my business account. She pays the vendors. Do you have the login? Patrick fumbled with his phone. I think so. She wrote it down in the Notes app for me once. He read me the credentials. I logged in. Jesus, Patrick, I breathed, looking at the ledger. What? She hasn't paid the lumber yard in 2 months. She hasn't paid the insurance premium. Patrick's face fell. She told me she paid them last week. She showed me the confirmation. She forged it, I said, pointing to the screen. Or she edited an old PDF. The money is gone, Patrick. Look at these withdrawals. Cash. Cash. Venmo to G. Scott. Patrick slammed his fist on the counter. I'm going to lose the business. If I don't pay the insurance. We can fix this, I said, my voice calm. But we have to stop the bleeding. Change the password. Now. Lock her out. Patrick did it. His large fingers were clumsy on the small screen, but he managed. Done. Good. Now they have no money. No credit cards. And in about 5 minutes, I looked at the ceiling, no home. You're kicking him out? Absolutely. And you're not letting her back in your house, are you? Patrick shook his head. I don't want her near the kids. Not after knowing she stole from their grandfather. Good. So they'll be on the street. With no money. They'll go to her mom's, Patrick said. Her mom has a big house in Evanston. She'll take them in. I picked up my phone. Not if we get to her first. I found the number for Mrs. Miller, Eleanor. She was a woman who wore pearls to the grocery store and judged anyone who didn't. She thought Patrick was blue-collar trash, but she tolerated him because he provided for her daughter. I put the phone on speaker. Hello? Eleanor's crisp voice answered. Eleanor, it's Valerie. From across the street. Oh, hello, Valerie. Is everything all right? You sound breathless. I'm afraid not, Eleanor. I have some very difficult news. Patrick is here with me. Patrick? Why isn't he at work? He had to come home, I said. Because we found Teresa and my husband, Greg, together. Together? What do you mean? I mean, I came home and found them having sex in my bathtub, Eleanor. Silence. A long, stunned silence. That's impossible, Eleanor sputtered. Teresa is a good Christian mother. She wouldn't. She's stolen over $40,000 from Patrick's father's nursing home fund to pay for it, Patrick spoke up, his voice rough. And she hasn't paid my business insurance. She's destroying our family, Eleanor. I don't believe you, Eleanor said, her voice trembling. We have the bank records, I said. And the text messages. They're planning to run away to Florida with the stolen money. I just wanted you to know, Eleanor, because I'm filing police reports for theft and embezzlement this afternoon. I didn't want you to find out from the police scanner. Police? Eleanor gasped. No police. Think of the scandal. The grandchildren. Teresa didn't think of the grandchildren when she stole their inheritance, Patrick said. She's not welcome in my house tonight, Eleanor. And Greg isn't welcome in Valery's. I assume they'll be coming to you. I. Eleanor sounded like she was hyperventilating. If she really did this. I cannot have that in my house. My heart condition. I'm sorry, Eleanor, I said. I have to go. They're coming downstairs. I hung up. Patrick looked at me. That was cold. That was necessary, I said. She enables Teresa. She always has. Now, Teresa has nowhere to hide. Just then, we heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, hesitant footsteps. Greg and Teresa appeared in the kitchen. They were dressed, but disheveled. Greg was wearing wrinkled shorts and a t-shirt. Teresa had thrown on a sundress, her wet hair plastered to her skull. They looked like refugees from a storm. Greg tried to put on his businessman face. He straightened his shoulders. Okay, he said. We're leaving. But this isn't over, Valery. I want access to the bank accounts. I need to book a hotel. I smiled. I picked up my phone and waved it. Card declined, Greg, I said. I froze everything. You what? His face went pale. And Patrick changed the business passwords, I added. So no more siphoning money, Teresa. Teresa gasped. She turned to Patrick. Patrick, I have no cash. How am I supposed to eat? Where am I supposed to sleep? Patrick crossed his arms. You have that condo in Florida money, don't you? Oh wait. That was my dad's money. And I'm getting that back. Get out, I said. Valery, be reasonable, Greg pleaded, stepping forward. I have rights. This is my house too. Actually, I said, the deed is in both our names, but I pay the mortgage. And since I have documented proof of your infidelity and financial fraud, my lawyer, who I texted 10 minutes ago, says I have grounds for an immediate restraining order if you refuse to leave. Do you want the neighbors to see the police escort you out? Greg looked at the door. He looked at me. He saw the ice in my eyes. Fine, he spat. Come on, Teresa. We'll go to your mom's. Patrick let out a dark chuckle. Good luck with that. They shuffled toward the door. I watched them go. My husband of 15 years. My best friend. Two strangers. As Greg opened the front door, the heat hit them. Wait, I called out. They stopped, looking back with a glimmer of hope. Leave the keys, I said. House keys. Car keys. The car? Greg shouted. How am I supposed to leave? The lease is in my name, Greg. You just drive it. It's a company car for my company. You're not an employee. Hand them over. Greg looked like he wanted to punch me. But he reached into his pocket and threw the fob on the floor. It skittered across the hardwood. Teresa dropped her house key next to it. They walked out into the blistering heat. I walked to the door and slammed it. I locked the deadbolt. I turned to Patrick. Phase 1 complete. Phase 1? Patrick asked. Phase 1 was getting them out, I said. Phase 2 is making sure they never get back up. The house was quiet again, but the energy had shifted. It wasn't the peaceful silence of my sanctuary anymore, it was the heavy, charged silence of a command center. What's Phase 2? Patrick asked, sitting heavily on one of the kitchen stools. He looked drained. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the reality was setting in. Phase 2 is evidence gathering, I said. We have the texts. We have the bank statements. But we need more. We need to catch them in their own lies before they have time to come up with new ones. How? Do you know where they're going? I asked. Patrick shrugged. If Eleanor doesn't take them in, probably a cheap motel. Or maybe Greg has a friend. Greg doesn't have friends, I said. He has drinking buddies. And none of them will take in a mistress too. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from our home security system. Front door camera detected motion. I pulled up the feed. They were still in the driveway. They were arguing. Look at this, I said, holding the phone so Patrick could see. On the small screen, we watched Greg and Teresa standing in the baking sun. Greg was gesturing wildly at his phone. Teresa was crying, her mascara running down her face in black streaks. I tapped the audio button on the camera feed. The sound crackled through. Said you handled the money. Teresa was screaming. You said we had enough cash in the crypto wallet to last us a month. I can't access it. Greg yelled back. Valery must have flagged the IP address or something. Or maybe the market crashed. It says account frozen. You idiot. Teresa shoved him. I left my husband for you. I left my kids. And now we're homeless. This is your fault. Greg roared. If you hadn't insisted on coming over today, if you hadn't been so greedy, we would be fine. Greedy? Teresa laughed hysterically. You're the one who wanted the sports car. You're the one who wanted the expensive dinners. I did everything for you, Greg. I stole from Patrick for you. Patrick flinched next to me. Hearing it confirmed out loud, in her own voice, was a fresh knife to the heart. I got it, I whispered. I hit the record button on the app. I never loved him. Teresa shouted, pointing at her own house across the street. He's a bore. He comes home dirty and tired and he never wants to go out. But you were supposed to be my ticket out of this suburban hellhole. Well, guess what, honey? Greg sneered. You're stuck in the hellhole. And you're broke. My lawyer is going to fix this. Valery can't lock me out of my own money. Your money? Teresa mocked. She makes the money, Greg. You haven't made a dime in 3 years. You're a leech. Just like Patrick said. Greg raised his hand as if to strike her. Patrick stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. If he hits her. Patrick growled. But Greg didn't hit her. He dropped his hand and kicked the tire of Teresa's silver Toyota instead. Just get in the car, Greg muttered. We'll go to the Motel 6 off the interstate. I have $20 in my wallet. Motel 6? Teresa wailed. I can't stay at a Motel 6. It's that or the park bench, princess. Get in. They got into Teresa's car. It revved up. It sounded like it needed a muffler repair, something Patrick probably would have fixed if she hadn't been betraying him. They backed out of the driveway and sped off. I stopped the recording. We have it, I said. Admission of theft. Admission of the affair. Admission that the marriage was a sham for money. No judge in Illinois will give them a dime of alimony after hearing that. Patrick looked at me. You recorded that? Every second. Patrick let out a long breath. He rubbed his temples. I need to go home, he said. I need to scrub the house. I feel like everything she touched is dirty. Patrick, I said softly. Are you going to be okay? He looked at me. His eyes were sad, but clear. No. Not for a long time. But I'm going to survive. For the kids. Call me if you need anything, I said. We're in this together now. Yeah, he said. The alliance. He walked out the front door, crossing the street to his own broken home. I locked the door behind him. I was alone in my big, cool, quiet house. The silence should have been lonely. But as I looked around at the foyer, at the stairs, at the kitchen, it didn't feel lonely. It felt clean. The trash had taken itself out. But as I stood there, my mind started racing. Phase 1 was complete. Phase 2, evidence, was well underway. But there was a Phase 3. Greg thought he could call a lawyer. He thought he could fight me for the house, for the pension, for the assets. He thought the law would protect him because he was the dependent spouse. He didn't know about the prenup. We had signed it 15 years ago, on a napkin in a bar, as a joke. But then, my father, a lawyer, had made us formalize it. Greg had signed it laughing, saying, I'll never need this, baby. I'm going to be a millionaire. I hadn't thought about that document in a decade. It was buried in the safe in the basement. If I could find it, if it was still valid. Greg wouldn't just be broke. He would be legally obliterated. I walked to the basement door. I descended the stairs to the basement, the cool air wrapping around my ankles. It was a finished basement, Greg's man cave, as he liked to call it, though I was the one who paid for the 70-inch TV and the leather recliners. I walked past his golf clubs, past the mini-fridge stocked with craft beers I had bought him, and headed straight for the wall safe hidden behind a framed poster of The Godfather. The irony wasn't lost on me. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear anymore, but from a vibrating intensity of purpose. I spun the dial. Right to 10. Left to 25. Right to 47. My birthday. Of course, he had set the combination to my birthday so he wouldn't forget it. The heavy door clicked open. Inside were our passports, some birth certificates, and a thick manila envelope at the very bottom, buried under old tax returns. I pulled it out. The paper felt heavy, textured. I opened the clasp and slid out the document. It was yellowing slightly at the edges. The prenuptial agreement. I sat down on Greg's leather recliner and turned on the reading lamp. I hadn't looked at this in 15 years. My father, a shark of a divorce attorney in his prime, had insisted on it. Greg had pouted for days, calling it unromantic and a sign of distrust. But eventually, he signed it because he wanted the wedding at the country club, and my father was writing the check for that, too. I scanned the legalese. My eyes skipped over the standard asset division clauses until I found it. Article 4, Section C, the Infidelity Clause. My father had inserted a poison pill. If either party was found to have committed adultery, proven by a preponderance of evidence, that party forfeited their right to any alimony, spousal support, or claim on the marital home if said home was purchased primarily by the other party's premarital or separate funds. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The house was in both our names, yes, but the down payment, the massive, 40% down payment, had come from my trust fund, which was kept separate. And I had the bank records to prove every mortgage payment came from my salary. With the video of his confession in the driveway and the text messages, Greg wasn't just going to be homeless tonight. He was going to be homeless forever. I took a picture of the page with my phone. Then I texted it to Greg. No caption. Just the image. Upstairs, I heard the front door open. Patrick was back. I went up to meet him. He looked different. He had showered and changed into clean jeans and a plain black t-shirt. He looked weary, but his eyes were clear. "Did you do it?" I asked. "I called the church," Patrick said, his voice flat. Teresa was the head of the fundraising committee at St. Jude's. She prided herself on being the pious one in the neighborhood. And? I spoke to Pastor Miller. I told him I needed to step down from the parish council because my wife had misappropriated funds from my father's care to finance an illicit affair. You told him everything? I didn't have to give details, Patrick said, leaning against my kitchen island. But I told him that Teresa would be taking a leave of absence from all committees effective immediately, as she was no longer residing in the parish. How did he take it? He was shocked. He said he would pray for us. But I know how this town works, Valery. By tomorrow morning, the entire choir will know. By noon, the PTA will know. Good, I said ruthlessly. Reputation was the only currency Teresa had. Now she's bankrupt. What about Greg? Patrick asked. You hit his wallet. What about his pride? I'm working on that, I said, glancing at the clock. It was 2 p.m. Greg has a meeting with his biggest consulting client tomorrow morning. The one he's been bragging about for months. The one that's supposed to save his career. Is he going to make it? Not if I have anything to say about it, I said. Because I happen to know the VP of operations at that company. We went to business school together. I opened my laptop again. What are you writing? Patrick asked. A letter of concern, I said, typing furiously. Regarding a potential conflict of interest and ethical violation involving their consultant, Mr. Gregory Scott. I'm attaching the police report number I'm about to file for the embezzlement of family funds. You're going to get him fired? He's a liability, Patrick. No company wants a consultant who steals from his own wife and launders money through crypto. It's a security risk. I'm just doing my civic duty. Patrick watched me, a mixture of awe and fear on his face. Remind me never to cross you, Valery. You never would, I said softly, stopping my typing for a moment to look at him. Because you're a decent man, Patrick. Greg forgot that I'm not just a wife. I'm a CFO. My entire job is managing risk and eliminating threats. And right now, he is the biggest threat to my balance sheet. I hit send. The sun began to set on the worst Tuesday of my life. The adrenaline that had sustained me through the afternoon began to ebb, leaving behind a hollow, aching exhaustion. Patrick had gone home to be with his children when they returned from school. He had the impossible task of explaining why Mommy wasn't there for dinner, without shattering their entire world. I didn't envy him. I was alone in the house. The silence, which had felt empowering earlier, now felt heavy. Every corner of the room held a memory. The sofa where Greg and I watched movies. The dining table where we hosted Thanksgiving. The kitchen where he used to make me coffee, back when he still pretended to care. I poured myself a glass of wine, a deep, red Cabernet, and sat on the patio, watching the fireflies dance in the twilight. My phone buzzed. A voicemail. It was Greg. I stared at the screen. Part of me wanted to delete it. But the strategist in me knew I needed to hear it. Evidence. Everything was evidence now. I pressed play. Valerie. Val, pick up. Look, we're at this dump off the highway. It smells like smoke. Teresa is crying nonstop. Please, baby. Be reasonable. I saw the picture of the prenup. You can't be serious. That was 15 years ago. We built this life together. Doesn't that mean anything? I messed up, okay? I'm a man. I have needs. But I love you. Don't throw us away over a mistake. Call me. Please. A mistake. He called 6 months of lying, stealing, and plotting to bankrupt me a mistake. He called sleeping with my best friend in my house a need. I didn't feel love. I didn't even feel the sharp sting of betrayal anymore. I felt disgusted. It was the same feeling you get when you find a cockroach in your pantry. You don't ask the cockroach why it's there. You just call the exterminator. And that's exactly what I did. At 7 p.m., a white van pulled into the driveway. A one locksmith's. The locksmith was a cheerful young man named Dave. He whistled while he worked, completely unaware that he was sealing the tomb of my marriage. You want all the exterior doors rekeyed, ma'am? He asked, looking at the grandeur of the front entrance. All of them, I said. Front, back, side garage, and the patio doors. And I need deadbolts installed on the master bedroom suite. Deadbolts on the bedroom? He raised an eyebrow. I sleep better when I'm secure, I said flatly. It took him 2 hours. While he worked, I went room by room with a trash bag. I went into the bathroom, the scene of the crime. I couldn't look at the jacuzzi. I threw a towel over it. I gathered Greg's toiletries, his razor, his expensive face cream, his toothbrush. I threw them all in the bag. I went to the closet. I pulled out his clothes. Not all of them, just enough to make a point. His suits, his golf shirts, his precious sneaker collection. I packed them into boxes I had dragged up from the basement. I wasn't packing for him out of kindness. I was purging. By 9:30 p.m., the locks were changed. Dave handed me the new set of keys. They felt cool and heavy in my palm. Keys to a new life. That'll be $450, Dave said. I handed him my credit card. Worth every penny. After he left, I locked every single bolt. The thud click of the new locks was the most comforting sound I had heard all day. I sat back down on the sofa, the boxes of Greg's life stacked by the front door like a barricade. I checked my email. A reply from the VP at Greg's client company. Dear Valerie. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We take allegations of ethical misconduct and financial impropriety very seriously. We have suspended Mr. Scott's contract pending an internal investigation. Security has been notified to revoke his access badge effective immediately. I closed the laptop. Greg would wake up tomorrow in a cheap motel, with no wife, no home, no money, and now, no job. I took a sip of wine. It tasted like victory, but it also tasted like ashes. I looked at the empty spot on the couch next to me. I realized that the man I missed didn't exist. The Greg I loved, the supportive, funny, kind partner, had been a fiction for a long time. The man in the motel was the reality. And the reality was a parasite. I finished my wine, turned off the lights, and went upstairs to sleep in the guest room. I couldn't sleep in the master bed. Not yet. Tomorrow was going to be the final battle. And I needed to be rested. I woke up at 6 a.m. out of habit. For a split second, in the haze of sleep, I reached out my hand to the other side of the bed, expecting to feel Greg's warm shoulder. My hand hit the cool, crisp sheets of the guest bed. Reality crashed back in. The motel. The jacuzzi. The locksmith. I didn't cry. I got up, made coffee, strong, black coffee, and showered. I dressed in my sharpest power suit, a navy blue blazer, tailored trousers, and heels that clicked with authority on the hardwood. I wasn't dressing for work. I was dressing for war. At 8 a.m., my lawyer, Sarah, arrived. Sarah and I had gone to college together. She was a shark in a silk blouse. I had texted her last night, and she cleared her schedule. Okay, Val, Sarah said, setting her briefcase on the kitchen island, right where the tax folder had been yesterday. Show me everything. I laid it out. The printed text logs. The bank statements. The video of the driveway confession. The photo of the prenup. The emails forwarded from Greg's phone. Sarah scanned the documents, her eyes narrowing behind her glasses. She didn't speak for 10 minutes. The only sound was the turning of pages and her occasional hum of approval. Finally, she looked up. A slow, predatory smile spread across her face. Valery, she said. This isn't a divorce case. This is a massacre. I know, I said. Can he fight the prenup? He can try, Sarah said. But with the infidelity clause and the documented financial fraud? No judge will touch him. In fact, we're going to file for an emergency freeze on all marital assets today. And I'm going to file a motion to compel him to repay the misappropriated funds, the crypto, the cash withdrawals, before any division of assets is even discussed. What about the house? He's out, Sarah confirmed. We'll file for exclusive possession of the marital residence based on his erratic behavior and the theft. He won't be allowed within 500 feet of this property without a police escort. Good, I said. Because he's coming back today. He is? He texted me at 3 a.m., I said, showing her the phone. I'm coming over to get my suits and my computer. Don't try to stop me. Sarah laughed. Let him come. In fact, let's invite him. Just then, my phone rang. It was Patrick. Val, his voice sounded rough, like he hadn't slept. They're at my house. Or, outside my house. What? Teresa is banging on the door. She wants to see the kids. The kids are crying. She's screaming that I kidnapped them. Did you let her in? Hell no, Patrick said. I locked the deadbolts like you said. But Val, she looks crazy. She looks desperate. Greg is probably with her, I said. Or he's on his way here. He just left, Patrick said. He dropped her off and peeled out. He's headed your way. Okay, I said, feeling a surge of cold adrenaline. Let him come. Patrick, call the police. Tell them your estranged wife is trespassing and causing a disturbance. Do it now. Call the cops on Teresa? She stole from your father, Patrick. She is traumatizing your children. Call them. Okay, Patrick whispered. Okay. I hung up and looked at Sarah. He's coming. Sarah pulled out her phone. I'll call the station. We'll get a squad car here for a civil standby. We don't want him kicking down the door. I went to the window. The cul-de-sac was quiet, deceptively peaceful under the morning sun. But I knew the storm was approaching. I thought about Greg driving over here. He probably thought he could bully me. He probably thought he could charm me. He probably thought that because I had been the nice wife for 15 years, I would fold. He forgot that I negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts for a living. He forgot that I stared down IRS auditors without blinking. He was about to walk into a buzzsaw. I walked to the front door and unlocked it. Just the handle, not the deadbolt. I wanted him to try. 10 minutes later, I heard the engine. Greg's lease, my lease, a black BMW, screeched into the driveway. He slammed the door. He was wearing the same wrinkled clothes from yesterday. He looked hungover, unshaven, and furious. He marched up the walkway. He didn't see the police cruiser turning the corner at the end of the street. He didn't see Sarah standing in the shadows of the dining room. He only saw the door. He pounded on it. "Valerie! Open this damn door! I need my suit for my meeting. Open it!" I stood on the other side, calm, composed. "Valerie!" I opened the door. But I left the storm door, the heavy glass security door, locked. We stood there, separated by 2 inches of reinforced glass. "Open it," he snarled. "I live here." "Not anymore," I said. Greg looked terrible. The confident, preening man who had soaked in my tub yesterday was gone. In his place was a desperate, sweating creature. His eyes were bloodshot, and there was a frantic energy radiating off him that made my skin crawl. "Valerie, stop playing games," he shouted through the glass, his breath fogging up the pain. "I have a meeting with the Johnson account in an hour. I need my suit. I need my laptop. Let me in." "You don't have a meeting, Greg," I said, my voice projecting clearly through the glass. He froze. "What?" "The Johnson account," I said. "I emailed Bill Johnson last night. I told him about the police investigation into your embezzlement. They terminated your contract this morning. Check your email." Greg stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. He fumbled for his phone in his pocket. He stared at the screen. His face went from red to a sickly shade of gray. You got me fired?" he whispered. Then he slammed his hand against the glass. "You bitch! You vindictive bitch! That was a $50,000 contract. That was my reputation you were trading on," I countered. "And you stole $40,000 from Patrick's father. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences?" "I'm going to break this door down," he screamed, stepping back and lowering his shoulder. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Sarah stepped into view beside me. She was holding a file folder. Greg stopped. "Who is that?" "My lawyer," I said. "And behind you, that's the police." Greg spun around. A squad car had pulled up silently to the curb. 2 officers were walking up the driveway, hands resting near their belts. "Mr. Scott?" the taller officer asked. Greg put his hands up, his bravado evaporating instantly. "Officers, thank God. My wife, she's locked me out of my own house. She's stealing my property." The officer looked at Greg, then at me through the door. I unlocked the storm door and stepped out onto the porch, Sarah right beside me. "Officers," Sarah said, handing them a document. "This is an emergency order of protection and a request for exclusive possession of the marital residence, filed this morning. Mr. Scott has threatened my client and has admitted to financial fraud and theft. We do not feel safe with him on the premises." The officer scanned the paper. He looked at Greg. "Is this true, sir? Do you live here?" "Yes. My name is on the deed," Greg shouted. "And here is the prenuptial agreement," Sarah handed another paper, "which states that in the event of infidelity, which we have documented proof of, Mr. Scott forfeits rights to the residence." The officer handed the papers back to Sarah. He turned to Greg. "Sir, this looks like a civil matter for the courts to decide, but right now, the lady has possession of the home and she wants you to leave." If you try to force entry, that's breaking and entering. And with the disturbance you're causing. I just want my clothes. Greg pleaded, his voice cracking. I have nothing. She locked me out with nothing. I looked at Greg. I felt a flicker of pity, but I stomped it out. He didn't pity me when he plotted to leave me bankrupt. I packed your things, I said. I pointed to the side of the garage. There are 4 boxes there. Your suits. Your shoes. Your toiletries. Take them and go. Greg looked at the boxes. He looked at the neighbors who were now peeking out of their windows. He looked at the police officers. He realized he had lost. He walked over to the boxes. He picked up the top one. He looked back at me one last time. There was no love in his eyes, only pure, unadulterated hate. You'll pay for this, Valery, he hissed. I'll take half. I'll take everything. You can try, I said. But you're bringing a knife to a nuclear war. He loaded the boxes into the car. The officers watched him until he backed out of the driveway and drove off. I watched his car disappear around the corner. My legs felt weak. I leaned against the doorframe. You did good, Sarah said, putting a hand on my shoulder. Is it over? I asked. No, Sarah said grimly. That was just the opening skirmish. Now comes the legal battle. He's going to get a lawyer. A scumbag one, probably, who will tell him to fight for the pension and the alimony. We need to be ready. I'm ready, I said. Across the street, I saw another squad car pulling up to Patrick's house. I saw Teresa sitting on the front steps, sobbing into her hands while an officer spoke to her. Patrick was standing in the doorway, his arms crossed, his face like stone. The neighborhood was waking up. The facade of the perfect suburban life had been shattered. And standing there on my porch, breathing in the morning air, I realized I didn't care. Let the neighbors talk. Let the rumors fly. I was free. But as I turned to go back inside, Sarah's phone rang. She answered it, listened for a moment, and her expression darkened. Valery, she said. We have a problem. What? That was my contact at the bank. Greg tried to access the safe deposit box at the main branch 10 minutes ago. The one you didn't freeze because you forgot it existed. My heart stopped. The safe deposit box. The one we opened 10 years ago. I never used it. But Greg. What was in it? I whispered. We don't know, Sarah said. But he emptied it. And whatever was in there, he thinks it's his golden ticket. The safe deposit box. How could I have been so stupid? It was a small box at a credit union we rarely used. I remembered opening it years ago to store some grandmother's jewelry, which I later moved to the house safe. I had assumed it was empty. He emptied it? I asked Sarah, my voice rising in panic. What could possibly be in there? Think, Valery, Sarah urged. Cash? Bonds? Incriminating documents? My mind raced. Greg was lazy. He wasn't a mastermind. If he had hidden something there, it had to be something he didn't want me to see, but also something he needed to keep safe. Suddenly, a memory surfaced. About 5 years ago, Greg had briefly handled the estate of his late aunt. He had told me there was no inheritance, just debt. But around that same time, he had been obsessed with that credit union. His aunt, I whispered. He told me she died penniless. But what if she didn't? What if he hid the inheritance money in cash or bearer bonds to avoid sharing it or paying taxes? If he did, Sarah said, her eyes lighting up, and he didn't declare it on your joint tax returns, that's tax fraud. And hiding assets from a spouse. But he has it now, I said. he has the cash. He can use it to hire a lawyer. He can use it to fight me. Or, Sarah said, he can use it to hang himself. If he spends undeclared cash, he creates a paper trail. We spent the rest of the day strategizing. But the real drama came that evening. I was in the kitchen, exhausted, eating a salad I couldn't taste. The doorbell rang. It wasn't the police this time. It wasn't Patrick. I checked the camera. It was Greg. Again. But this time, he wasn't disheveled. He was wearing the suit I had packed for him. He looked smug. He held up a piece of paper to the camera. It looked like a legal document. I opened the door, leaving the storm door locked. Back for more? I asked. Hello, Valerie, Greg said smoothly. I just wanted to serve you personally. My lawyer thought it would be a nice touch. He slid the paper through the gap in the mail slot. I picked it up. It was a lawsuit. Gregory Scott versus Valerie Scott. He wasn't just filing for divorce. He was suing me for intentional infliction of emotional distress and illegal lockout. And he was demanding $10,000 a month in temporary spousal support immediately. You have money for a lawyer? I asked, holding up the paper. Did you find something in the safety deposit box, Greg? His smug smile faltered for a fraction of a second. I don't know what you're talking about. I have friends. People who know I'm the victim here. Teresa? I asked. Is she your friend? I heard she's sleeping in her car because her mother wouldn't let her in. Teresa is none of your business, Greg said. See you in court, Valerie. And by the way, check the basement. I think I left the water running. He turned and walked away, whistling. Water running? I ran to the basement. I splashed through a puddle at the bottom of the stairs. He hadn't left the water running now. He had sabotaged the water heater before he left yesterday. He had loosened the valve. It had been dripping slowly for 24 hours, soaking the carpet, ruining the drywall. My sanctuary. My home. He was trying to destroy it piece by piece from the outside. I stood there in the soggy water, ruining my expensive heels. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break down. This was his game. He wanted to break me emotionally so I would write him a check just to make him go away. But as I looked at the ruined carpet, I didn't feel broken. I felt clarity. He was desperate. These were the actions of a terrorist, not a winner. He was lashing out because he was drowning. I walked back upstairs, wet footprints trailing on the hardwood. I picked up the phone and called Patrick. He sabotaged the basement, I said. He slashed my tires, Patrick replied. I came out to go to the grocery store. All 4 tires. Flat. They're escalating, I said. Good, Patrick said. That means they're scared. I took a deep breath. I walked to the mirror in the hallway. I looked at myself. I looked tired. I looked older. But I looked fierce. If you are still listening to this, if you are still with me in this messy, wet, chaotic moment, I need you to do something for me. Please, help me by liking this video and commenting the number 1 down below. Let me know that you are real, that you are on my side, and that I am not fighting this battle alone. Seeing your 1 tells me that you are amazing, and it gives me the strength to keep standing when everything around me is trying to knock me down. Your support is the fuel for my fire. Please, comment 1 so I can recognize you. And now, let me tell you what I did about the water, and the lawsuit, and the secret in the safety deposit box. I didn't clean up the basement immediately. Instead, I called the insurance adjuster. Then I called a forensic plumber, yes, that's a thing, to document that the valve had been tampered with manually. This wasn't wear and tear, the plumber said, taking photos. Someone took a wrench to this. See the scratch marks? Fresh metal. Can you testify to that? I asked. Absolutely. Another crime. Vandalism. Destruction of property. I forwarded the report to Sarah. Add it to the pile, I told her. The next few weeks were a blur of legal maneuvers. Greg's lawyer was a strip mall attorney who specialized in DUI cases, but he was aggressive. They bombarded us with motions. They demanded I pay Greg's legal fees. They demanded access to the house to appraise assets. But the real turning point came during the deposition. We forced Greg to sit down under oath. It was in a sterile conference room in downtown Chicago. Greg sat across the table, wearing one of the suits I had packed for him. He looked thinner. His fake tan was fading. Teresa was nowhere to be seen. Sarah started the questioning. She was gentle at first, lulling him into a false sense of security. Mr. Scott, you claim you have no assets, is that correct? That's correct. My wife controlled everything. And you have no income? No. She got me fired. Right. And the safety deposit box at First Union Credit Union? The one you accessed on the morning of July 16th? Greg stiffened. I went to check for my birth certificate. And was that all you removed? Yes. Sarah pulled out a document. We subpoenaed the access logs and the surveillance footage from the bank lobby, Mr. Scott. The video shows you entering with an empty backpack and leaving with a backpack that appeared significantly heavier. You also went into a private booth for 20 minutes. So? I was organizing my papers. Mr. Scott, Sarah leaned forward. We also subpoenaed the records of your late Aunt Martha's estate. Strangely, there was a withdrawal of $80,000 in cash from her account 2 days before she died. You had power of attorney. That money was never accounted for in the estate filing. Greg was sweating now. Visible beads of sweat on his forehead. I don't know what you're talking about. If you possess that cash, Sarah said, and you are using it to pay your legal fees, you are committing tax fraud and perjury right now. But here is the deal. We know you have it. We know you stole it from your dying aunt to hide it from your wife. If you drop the lawsuit for spousal support, if you sign the divorce papers giving Valerie the house and walking away clean, we won't report this to the IRS. It was a bluff. We didn't really want to deal with the IRS because it would drag the divorce out for years. We just wanted him gone. Greg looked at his lawyer. His lawyer looked at the evidence and shrugged, basically saying, "You're on your own, buddy." Greg looked at me. "You'd send me to jail?" "You tried to flood my house, Greg," I said softly. "You cheated on me in my tub. You tried to steal my equity. Jail is a kindness compared to what I really want to do to you." Greg slumped in his chair. The fight went out of him. He was a bully, and like all bullies, he crumbled when someone hit back harder. "Fine," he whispered. "I'll sign." "And one more thing," I said. "Where is Teresa?" Greg laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Teresa? She's gone." "Gone where?" "She tried to move in with me at the motel. But she wouldn't stop crying about her kids. She blamed me for everything. I kicked her out." "You kicked her out?" "Yeah. Last I heard, she was sleeping on her friend's couch in Joliet. Working at a diner." I felt a chill. Teresa, the woman who needed luxury like she needed air, was waiting tables in a rough suburb. "Sign the papers, Greg," I said. He signed. He signed away the house. He signed away the alimony. He signed away his dignity. I walked out of that conference room feeling 10 pounds lighter. But there was one last loose end. Patrick. I drove straight to Patrick's house. He was in the driveway, putting new tires on his truck. He signed, I told him, leaning out of my car window. Patrick dropped the tire iron. He walked over, wiping his hands on a rag. A slow smile spread across his face. He's gone? Gone. He's moving to his brother's place in Ohio. He has nothing. And Teresa? She's in Joliet. Waitressing. Patrick nodded slowly. Good. My lawyer got full temporary custody yesterday. She didn't even show up to the hearing. We won, Patrick, I said. Yeah, he said, looking at our two houses, the monuments to our broken lives. We won. But it sure feels like we lost a lot to get here. We lost the dead weight, I said. Now we rebuild. I thought the story ended there. I thought Greg fading into obscurity in Ohio was the end. But the universe has a funny way of balancing the scales. 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I got a letter. It wasn't for me. It was addressed to the occupant at my address, but it was from a cryptocurrency exchange. Greg had forgotten to change his mailing address for this one account. I opened it. I know, technically illegal, but I was the homeowner and he didn't live there. I call it an administrative error. It was a tax form. A 1099K. It detailed the transactions of the crypto account Greg and Teresa had set up. The one they used to siphon our money. I looked at the numbers. And then I started laughing. I laughed until I cried. I laughed until I was gasping for air on my kitchen floor. They hadn't just lost the money because I froze the account. They had lost the money because they were idiots. The statement showed that Greg had invested almost all of the stolen $40,000 into a specific meme coin, a risky, joke currency, right before the market crashed in late July. The balance of the account wasn't frozen. It was zero. Actually, it was worse than zero. Because they had traded so frequently, they had triggered short-term capital gains taxes on the few trades that did make money earlier in the year. Greg owed the IRS about $15,000 in taxes on money he had subsequently lost. He didn't have the money. He didn't have the house. And now, the IRS would be coming for him in Ohio. I took a picture of the document. I texted it to Patrick. Patrick, you're kidding me. Valery, poetic justice. They stole your dad's money to buy magic beans, and the beans rotted. Patrick, I should be mad. But honestly, I'm just glad they're suffering. I shredded the document. Greg would find out soon enough when the IRS garnished his wages, if he ever got a job again. Word count, approximate 750 words. The neighborhood is a small ecosystem. News travels fast, but the truth travels slower. For weeks, people had whispered. I saw them glancing at my house when they walked their dogs. I saw the hushed conversations at the mailbox. Teresa's mother, Eleanor, had tried to spin the narrative. She told people that Patrick was abusive, that Teresa had fled for her safety. She told people that I was a crazy, jealous woman who had seduced Greg and then kicked him out. It was infuriating. I was the victim, yet I was being painted as the villain in the local gossip mill. But I had one advantage. I had the truth. And I had the receipts. The annual HOA, Homeowners Association, meeting was held in September at the community center. Usually, I skipped it. But this year, I went. Patrick went too. We walked in together. The room went silent. Eleanor was there, sitting in the front row, holding court. She glared at us. I don't think non-members should be here, Eleanor announced loudly. And since Patrick's business is failing. My business is fine, Eleanor, Patrick said, his voice booming. Now that I'm not being embezzled from. Gasps rippled through the room. How dare you? Eleanor stood up. You drove my daughter away. I stood up. I didn't yell. I projected my boardroom voice. Eleanor, stop, I said. Everyone here knows Teresa. Everyone here knows Greg. And everyone here knows Patrick and me. We have lived quietly, paid our dues, and helped our neighbors for years. I looked around the room. I know there are rumors, I said. So let's clear the air. My husband and Teresa had an affair. They stole over $60,000 from our families. They planned to mortgage our homes and run away. We caught them. We divorced them. And now, we are rebuilding. Lies! Eleanor shrieked. I have the police report number for the theft, I said calmly. And I have the admission of guilt recorded. If anyone wants to hear it, come see me after the meeting. No one moved. Eleanor turned purple. She grabbed her purse and stormed out. The silence that followed was heavy. Then, Mrs. Higgins, the elderly lady who lived next to Patrick, stood up. Well, she said. I never liked Teresa anyway. She never returned my Tupperware. Laughter broke out. The tension snapped. People came up to us, shaking Patrick's hand, hugging me. The truth had set us free. The cloud of shame moved from our houses to Eleanor's. We walked out of that meeting with our heads held high. We had reclaimed our narrative. 3 months later. November. The leaves in Chicago were turning brilliant shades of red and gold. The air was crisp. My house was different. I had finally hired a contractor, not Patrick. We wanted to keep things professional, to gut the master bathroom. I smashed the jacuzzi myself. I took a sledgehammer to it. It felt amazing. The cracking of the acrylic, the shattering of the fiberglass, it was the best therapy money could buy. I installed a large walk-in steam shower with slate tiles. Masculine, modern, clean. No place for secrets. I saw Patrick often. We weren't dating. Everyone expected us to, but we weren't. We were trauma-bonded, my therapist said. We were soldiers who had fought in the same trench. We understood each other's silence. He came over for Thanksgiving. Just him and his 2 boys. I cooked a turkey. The boys played video games in the basement, which had been recarpeted. You know, Patrick said, swirling his wine. The kids seem happier. They do? Yeah. Teresa, she was always stressed. Always performing. Trying to make them perfect. Now? We just live. It's messy. The house is a wreck half the time. But it's peaceful. Peace, I said. That's the word. I feel peaceful. Have you heard from him? Patrick asked. Greg? No. But Sarah told me he tried to sue his brother in Ohio for unlawful eviction because his brother kicked him out for stealing beer. Patrick laughed. Some people never change. And Teresa? She calls the kids sometimes, Patrick said, his face darkening. She cries. She asks for money. I told the kids the truth, mostly. I told them Mom made some bad choices and she needs to fix herself before she can be a mom again. You're a good dad, Patrick. I'm trying. We sat there, 2 survivors of a shipwreck eating pumpkin pie. It wasn't the life I had planned. It wasn't the perfect marriage I thought I had. But it was real. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. Word count, approximate 800 words. The winter passed, and spring arrived. and with it, a new version of me emerged. I had spent so many years being Valery the provider, Valery the wife, Valery the CFO. I had forgotten who Valery was. I started taking painting classes. Abstract art. I threw paint at canvas with the same energy I had used to destroy the jacuzzi. It was messy and colorful and liberated. I traveled. I went to Italy alone. I sat in cafes in Florence and drank espresso and didn't worry about whether Greg was bored or if he liked the hotel. I flirted with a waiter named Marco. I didn't sleep with him, but I let him light my cigarette, I don't even smoke, and tell me I was bellissima. It felt good to be seen. Not as a wallet. Not as a wife. But as a woman. I realized that my fear of aging, my fear that Greg was doing me a favor by staying with me, had been a cage of my own making. Greg made me feel old because he was immature. He made me feel boring because he required constant entertainment. Without him, I wasn't old. I was seasoned. I wasn't boring. I was sophisticated. One day, I was at the grocery store in the produce section, picking out avocados. I turned the corner and saw Eleanor. She looked frail. She saw me and tried to turn her cart around, but she was stuck. "Hello, Eleanor," I said. She looked at me with venom, but also with something else. "Shame? Teresa is coming home," she snapped. "She's moving into my guest room. She's going to fight for the children." "She can try," I said pleasantly. "But Patrick has full custody. And unless she has $40,000 to pay back the estate, I don't think the judge will be impressed." Eleanor pressed her lips together. "You ruined her life." "No, Eleanor," I said, picking up a perfect avocado. "I just stopped paying for it." I walked away. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel the need to argue. I just felt indifferent. They were ghosts. They couldn't haunt me anymore because I didn't believe in them. A year has passed since that Tuesday. Patrick and I are still neighbors. We are still friends. We have redefined what family means. Sometimes, on Sundays, we grill together. The neighbors don't gossip anymore, they just wave. They see two people who saved each other. I got a promotion at work. CEO. The board said they admired my decisiveness in crisis management. If only they knew. I still live in my house. My sanctuary. It doesn't smell like Greg's cologne or Teresa's perfume anymore. It smells of eucalyptus and oil paint and fresh coffee. Greg is still in Ohio, working at a car wash, from what I hear. He sent me an email on my birthday. "Happy birthday, Val. I miss the dogs." We didn't have dogs. He was fishing. Testing the waters. Trying to see if there was a crack in the armor. I deleted it without replying. There are days when the loneliness creeps in. Days when I miss having someone to tell about my day. But then I remember the feeling of the key turning in the lock. I remember the sound of the water running. I remember the lies. And I realize that being alone is a luxury compared to being with the wrong person. So, here I am. Sitting in my renovated living room, talking to you. I wanted to share this story not to scare you, but to wake you up. We women, especially women of a certain age, we are taught to be grateful. Grateful to have a husband. Grateful to be chosen. We are taught to overlook the red flags because we are afraid of starting over. We are afraid of the silence in an empty house. But I am here to tell you that the silence is not scary. The silence is the sound of your own life waiting to be lived. If you are in a situation where you feel small, where you feel used, where your intuition is screaming at you that something is wrong, listen to it. Don't ignore the cracks. Don't excuse the disrespect. And for God's sake, don't let them have the joint bank account password if they haven't earned it. My betrayal was the most painful thing that ever happened to me. But it was also the catalyst. It forced me to stop being a passenger in my own life and take the wheel. I drove through the fire, and I came out the other side, not burned, but forged. Steel is made strong by fire. And ladies? We are made of titanium. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for walking through this dark hallway with me. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to lock a door to open a new chapter, please share this video. You never know who needs to hear it. You never know who is sitting in their car right now, staring at a text message, wondering if they are crazy. Tell them they aren't. Take care of yourselves. Protect your hearts. And protect your assets. Goodbye for now. As we close the chapter on Valery's turbulent journey, we are reminded that true strength often emerges from the ashes of betrayal. Her story serves as a powerful testament to the importance of self-worth and financial independence. It teaches us that while we cannot control the actions of others, we have absolute power over our own response. When life tries to devalue you, remember that your dignity is a non-negotiable asset that no one can steal unless you let them. Let this narrative inspire you to set firm boundaries and never apologize for protecting your peace. Resilience isn't just about surviving the storm, it's about rebuilding a better home in its wake. What did you take away from Valery's transformation? If you found value in this lesson of resilience, please leave the word good in the comments below. We love hearing your thoughts and growing together.